Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing to take a look at the next week's slate. Heading back out to the Big Ten, Michigan heading on the road to play Maryland. And I'll start with this. I just feel bad for this Terps team. Like, this is a Michigan team that is on a mission, on a warpath. They're pissed off, and Maryland's standing in the way. And this isn't one of those, like, look-ahead games. You got Ohio State next weekend. This is we're going to go on the road, take care of business, send a message to not only the Big Ten, but the entire country about what this Michigan team is. Really excited to get into this one. Maryland does a lot of things well on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, a gunslinger in Talia T at the quarterback position. We'll get into that. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a special shout out to the Michigan fans. Y'all know this is my program. I love talking about it. The amount of support you guys have shown the fellas really does mean a lot. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. We're going to get into the play calling you saw Michigan have in the second half. Rewatch the game a couple times, have some takeaways in my notes I want to talk about. Without further ado, let's get into this. And I want to start with this first. Looking at this Maryland team, it's a quality team. And like, they had a tough stretch in the middle of that season. But when you have a quarterback like Talia, and some talented wide receivers on the outside, it is a quality team in the Big Ten. And what I'm most excited about for this matchup on the defensive side of the ball is looking at our secondary that's been absolutely nails all year, going up against by far the best passing attack we'll have seen up until this point. Right? Talia, a quarterback that can make a lot of throws. They got a bunch of talented wide receivers. Let's put it frankly, this Penn State team, really, really good, not very good wide receivers. They could not separate against Michigan. You're going to see a little bit more of a challenge for that Michigan secondary against Maryland. They like to make you operate in space. They like to make you kind of defend that deeper third. Talia pushes the football down the field very well. It's going to be a nice test. But at the end of the day, Will Johnson, Josh Wallace, Makari Page, Mikey Sandstrom, Rod Moore, they've played at such a high level that I'm really excited to see what they can do against wide receivers that are quality, and kind of a nice tune-up to what you're going to see next Saturday when we have Ohio State coming to Ann Arbor. The second thing, I want to continue to see this pass rush. And this is what was most exciting about that Penn State game was that Penn State offensive line is one of the best units in the country. It's a hell of a lot better than what we're going to see against Ohio State in 2 weeks. And one of the things we were critical about Michigan last year was that pass rush was really good against teams that it should have been good against. But when it did get to some of those better teams, Ohio State, college football playoff level teams, you saw the pass rush taper off. You didn't see that for Michigan against Penn State. I mean, they were after the quarterback consistently, winning at the point of attack against the run. Again, that's a Penn State offense that, yes, the downfield passing attack, the wide receiver talent is not quite there. That Penn State offensive line, extremely good. They have a talented quarterback and two very good running backs. And Michigan in the front seven was phenomenal. And again, they weren't dropping back too much, but you can't speak enough of guys like Kenny Grant, Rayshon Benny. Chris Jenkins had a phenomenal game. They didn't really mention him much because he wasn't necessarily making plays, but taking on blocks, being disruptive. That front seven for Michigan was dominant. I want to continue to see that dominance show up against Maryland, and then when we're at home against Ohio State. Looking at the offensive side of the ball, this is what people want to talk about, right? Michigan ran the ball 32 straight times in the second half. They attempted one pass, went for pass interference, so it didn't even register in the stat sheet. So when you look at the box score, Michigan did not drop back to pass one time in that second half. I can see being critical of it. And there were certain instances where we're looking at 8-man boxes. It was a 3rd and 4, and we decided to run the football. We didn't get the first down. And I understand being critical of the one-dimensionality of that Michigan offense. But rewatching that game, one, Michigan ran the football extremely well against a Penn State defense that had the number 1 rushing defense across the entire country heading into that one. They were allowing running backs to have 1.8 yards per carry. Michigan ran the ball for 230 yards, averaged 5 yards per carry. So you look at that rushing attack, it was kind of some body blows, some 3-4 yard gains, and then you popped off some of the big ones in classic Michigan fashion where you grind out the opponent, and then you're able to kind of hit that big one. We did it against Penn State last year. We did it against Penn State this year as well, against an elite defense. I think the second thing why Michigan went to the run so much, two things really. One, Penn State couldn't move the football on Michigan. So what's the one way Penn State was going to get back into that game the second half if something bad happened on Michigan's offense, right? And Penn State really, really good at forcing turnovers. They were forcing, I believe, 2.2 turnovers per game, which was top 10 in the country. So you're looking at how do we let Penn State back in this game? It could be a strip sack. It could be an interception. Now, you trust J.J. McCarthy. He's been taking the care of the football extremely well all year. But that was one of those things where you didn't really want to give Penn State that even opportunity to make a play and kind of change the game flow, so to speak. Second thing that I noticed, and this was a little bit more of a schematic standpoint, Sharon Moore mentioned it in his press conference. Penn State, their pass rush is elite. And why it's elite is they get upfield, they shoot gaps extremely well. And you can kind of counter that with running some of that delayed handoffs that Michigan went to. You watch that game back. Those edge rushers, were getting after J.J. McCarthy the first two drives. The crowd was really loud. They were timing up the snap count extremely well. And J.J. McCarthy had two instances in that first two drives where Carson Barnhart, the right tackle, got beat clean. And it looked like we were going to have trouble blocking up some of those edge defenders who I will note are special dudes. I mean, Chop Robinson, Adissa Isaac, Danny Dennison. Chop Robinson probably going to go top 15 in the NFL draft. So I think partially Penn State's aggressive nature in terms of rushing the passer, going, just kind of shooting upfield, I think made him a little susceptible to that run game. And I think that's why Sharon Moore and Michigan continue to go to the run game. You're playing Maryland. You want to get back to being a little two-dimensional because you look at what Michigan wants to do. Michigan's goals, not just to beat Penn State on the road. Michigan's goal is beat Ohio State, win a Big Ten title, win a national title, and you're going to have to lean on JJ a little bit more than you did against Penn State. I think most Michigan fans realize that. JJ McCarthy's given Michigan no reason to doubt his ability to carry us to a national title. I still think he's a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback. And although the odds might have dipped because we didn't lean on him in one of the biggest games, there are going to be instances down the road, whether it's Ohio State at home, whether it's in the Big Ten championship game, whether it's in the national championship, that we're going to have to go ask JJ to go make some plays down the field. You have a ton of confidence that he can do so. A couple of things that on the offense that I want to see a little bit more of, that mammoth package they talk about when you trot in Miles Hinton and Trente Jones, that's really hard to stop because you have partially why you don't see a lot of college football teams do that is because they don't have 7 offensive linemen who should be on the field. A lot of the college football teams barely have 5 offensive linemen that they have a lot of confidence in, much less 7 to 10 that Michigan has. So Michigan, because they're so deep with that offensive line, guys like Trente Jones and Miles Hinton starting on most Power 5 teams across the country, gives them the ability to kind of trot those guys in and have 7 really quality offensive linemen. And you know what the identity of this Michigan team is, and that's bully ball, body blows. And you saw it work against Penn State. I think you're going to see it work against Ohio State, and I think you're going to see it work in the national championship games as well. I really like that. One other thing I wanted to note, Samaj Morgan, true freshman, for them to have confidence in him in the biggest game of the season on the road to go get him some slip screens and have him make it happen, that's massive. Because Michigan's looking for, you have Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson. They're really good after the catch. Samaj Morgan, I think, offers a little bit of a different caliber of juice. Kind of reminds me of AJ Henning, but a lot better, where it's like, let's get him the football on some end around, some screens. Let him have the football in space. Let him go make people miss. Samaj Morgan, I think, is going to be featured in this offense a little bit more. Excuse me. Getting to the pick here. Michigan coming in 21.5-point favorites or 20.5-point favorites. I think you're blindly taking Michigan at this point because this is a Michigan team that this is not a look-ahead spot. They're not going into Maryland. One, it's an extremely experienced veteran team, so you're not going to see those letdowns. We haven't seen a letdown performance from Michigan all year. You're not going to see that against Maryland. One, they're focused on one game at a time, and they're locked in. And they're not trying to they're going on the road. They want to send a message to not only the Big Ten, but all of college football that this is the best team in the country. You got to take Michigan to cover the points. They've given you no reason not to. This is a Michigan team that continues to roll. And I guess one thing I'm looking for is just a little bit more two-dimensionality. I think you use that run game because of how the game flow worked. You want to see go back to JJ McCarthy and because at the end of the day, we're winning a national championship with JJ McCarthy playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Want to see them get back to that. Again, JJ was 7 of 8. He was not bad. The narrative around they don't trust JJ McCarthy in this caliber of game, that's not true. JJ was very good in his limited chances to get the passing game going, not to mention that he was very good on the ground as well. If you're Michigan, roll through Maryland, stay healthy, get ready for Ohio State in Ann Arbor. This is a Michigan team on a warpath. You got to feel bad for the Terps. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.